Hey, hello. Yeah, this especially for the ESCO of the DCB, right? So earlier we had a meeting where we discussed what's the best way, to actually introduce our student leaders board to your juniors. Also, I was mentioning that it's very important whenever we introduce our organization, right? Our board, regardless of whether it is introducing it to our juniors, to outsiders during our outreach program, to always focus on why we exist. This is actually very useful, and I like to just consolidate what we discussed into these 4 points for for record lah. So maybe you can internalize these 4 points and continue to propagate and teach this to your juniors as the board continue to grow into the future. So the first point is actually on this emotional connection, because what happened, no, by articulating the underlying purpose and the why of why we exist and why we do what we do, we tap into the emotions and the value, of the people that's listening. People usually, we are motivated. The best motivation is because of a compelling vision. When someone is a visionary, we tend to follow this person. So people want to see a vision, and that's the why. That's why we must explain the why, or the cause of some of what the organization is trying to do and why we actually establish, right? So by establishing this emotional connection, it helps to build trust, it builds loyalty, it builds support for long-term relationship, right? So I was actually using this example that I actually learned myself. We are very familiar with Apple. In our schools, we use a lot of Apple products. So Apple as a company, why they are successful, uh, as of the time of this recording, I don't know whether they will be 20, 30 years later, but right now they are actually one of the most successful company in the world. And when we observe, their representatives sharing about their company, they always begin, their communication by stating why they actually do something, or why they actually roll out certain products. So, for example, one of their core values is that they believe in challenging the status quo. They look at things that's currently the same. They are not afraid to change things, and then they encourage people to think differently. And that's why they look at all the existing products that is right now that we have, and they think about how to change it, right? So they don't just focus on a certain category of product. They're not just like a computer sales company. They do computer, they do radios, they do phones, they do goggles, watches. Now sometimes there are some people who are saying they are working on an Apple car. So they just want to look at whatever is out there and do things differently. And because they have this core value of want to challenge the status quo and think differently, so it starts from the why, and this why drives all this innovation. And so when people listen to them, and if the audience when also value innovation, value creativity, then there is a very high likelihood that there's this emotional bond is actually forged. And that's why it goes beyond just what their product is, but people feel an affinity to the brand and want to support them. So that's why there are so many fans everywhere, right? So there is a reason, because they are very clear about why they are doing certain things. Now, the second point is that by sharing the why, it is actually a crucial ingredient to inspire people, right? Inspiration. And when we are an organization that wants to do something and makes a difference, we need to inspire others not to follow our lead. So, having a clear purpose, right? It gives meaning, it gives direction, and it's a guiding star, that actually inspire both individual and teams. It's not just the organization, but the individual that is inside the team also needs to have this clarity so that they can be inspired, right? When people understand why they are doing something, and believe that it is important, that's why you must say why we are important, then they are more likely to be passionate about it, to be dedicated about it, to devote their energy into it, and it become resilience, in the pursuit of the goals of the organization. Whether sometimes trying to go for our goals, there's a lot of obstacles. There are things that unforeseen things that comes about. that obstruct us, but because of this passion, we will find ways to overcome it, right? So defining the why provide a very clear direction when we make decision as well, right? Sometimes we need to make a decision. It go, plan A better or plan B better. We when we know why we are doing certain things, we make this decision a lot easier, right? It serves as a guiding principle that help us to prioritize what is important, what is less important, and that get rid of a lot of stress, right? A lot of stresses that we have when we try to embark on the project is about prioritizing, right? Which one is more important, which one is less important. That creates a lot of stress when there's no clarity on it. But when we realize that this is more important, this is less important, we know exactly what we need to do, right? If everything is important, everything is not important, when there's an imbalance here, that's where a lot of stress actually come about, right? So it allows us to focus by knowing what our priorities, because we know why we are doing certain things, right? And it allows us to also avoid all kinds of other distraction, things that's not really important. Just make a decision and go, right? The third point is differentiation. We always need to think about the value proposition, what we bring to the table. As a student organization, there are so many different types of student organization out there. Within a school, there's so many, and then within the nation, different types of schools, there's so many students organizations out there. What makes us different, right? This is something that we also need to understand why we exist. So we need to figure this one out, right? So when we communicate why we are different from others, we focus on the unique value proposition that we bring and the perspective that we bring to the table, right? This helps us to attract like-minded people who think like us, people who agree with what we are trying to do. Then they will lend us their support, right? So we need to have this kind of clarity as well to let people know where we are different from others, which is why one of the questions I asked you was how different is our program compared to what exists out there in other schools that we know of. By knowing this difference and making it clear and why we are different, it allows us to attract people on our course, and people will support us, right? So it allows us to resonate, people to resonate with our purpose, and then they can engage with what we have to offer. And the fourth point is also very important, most important in fact, is sustainability. No point having an organization gather all the like-minded people, and then after that whatever we try to do doesn't last, because we want to make lasting impact. So we need to be able to sustain it. And purpose-driven organization that has a very clear purpose, these are the organizations that will last long. They have a higher chance of long-term success. And when the why is deeply rooted and communicated effectively, every member knows, everyone that comes into contact with the organization knows, it attracts a loyal community of supporters, right? And partners who will share in this value. So this sustainable foundation let us grow, let us become resilient, because sometimes things get challenging. We know we have no idea how our environment can actually evolve. Sometimes things happen, and plans that we may have encounter challenging times. But because if our focus is clear, we know the why, we can be resilient, and we will find a way to navigate all the challenges that is before us. So it allows us to, and because of that, it allows us to continuously innovate, right? When we encounter challenges, we need to overcome it. We will innovate, we will adapt. Okay, so when we focus on the purpose rather than just the processes or the product, because the process and the product does not define the organization or even the student organization. It does not. Process, product, they can change very easily as long as it still meet the actual purpose, the actual why of why we are doing something. Also, when we understand that, and we have the flexibility when it comes to the processes and the product, we are very open to new possibilities, new ideas that the new generation of student leaders coming in can have, and we can evolve. And when we can evolve to changing circumstances while being true to our core value, that is where we know that this student leaders board will last and will endure. So 4 points for us to think about. So think it through. I hope you learn something very, very valuable here. And when you communicate to outsiders, to partners, and to our juniors, start with why. So you need to know, you yourself as part of the organization, as a leader of the organization, you need to know why we are here. All right. So all the best. Looking forward to your continuous growth.